As the name suggests, League One is the third tier of English football. The stadiums of this league are about as diverse as it gets, from some rather large modern stadiums that wouldn't look out of place in the Premier League, to some smaller, more characterful stadiums that have developed piece by piece over time. With that being said, here are the League One 2021-22 stadiums. Crown Ground, home of Accrington Stanley. Who are they? The stadium is quite modest, but it features a couple of stands that aren't too common. My favourite being the uncovered terrace at one end, which is home to the away fans. Because hospitality is overrated. But over to the west and to the south, it's just a very typical lower leagues English football stadium. Pirelli Stadium, home of Burton Albion. A bit of an interesting situation with the naming rights. Pirelli paid, not with cash in hand, but donated land. They own the land that the new stadium was built on. The exterior looks alright, a bit of brick, a bit of silver cladding and a bit of glass. It's made up of 4 single-tier stands, 3 of which are actually made up of terracing. Just the main stand is an all-seater. Abbey Stadium, home of Cambridge United. It's a town that's known for its university, but just like the rest of England, they love their football as well. And as with a lot of these grounds, there is a distinct mix of architectural styles, with the modern cantilever roof of the southern stand, the old school main stand, and the other 2 stands being terraces that are somewhere in between. Johnny Rocks Stadium, home of Cheltenham Town. Surprisingly, Johnny Rocks is not the traditional name of the ground, but it's the sponsor's name. Can anyone guess what product or service they provide? It's actually a luxury chauffeur service. I would never have guessed that in a million years. Anyway, we're not here for Johnny and his many rocks. It seems like a nice little ground. You've got a mini version of the main stand at Abbey Stadium that stretches about half the length of the pitch, as well as this slightly misaligned stand here. Not sure why that's the case, but not a big deal. Mournflake Stadium, home of Crewe Alexandra. Now, I couldn't guess what the last sponsor was, but Mournflake has to be a manufacturer of breakfast cereals. It just has to be. Mournflake, come on. Start your day with a bowl of Mournflakes. No, we didn't copy cornflakes. The stadium is overshadowed by the monumental by comparison main stand that makes up nearly 2/3 of the stadium's capacity. I said in the championship video that Ashton Gate was kinda like a mini Anfield. Well, this one's like a mini Anfield. Keepmoat Stadium, home of the Rovers of Doncaster. Missed opportunity. With that name, a moat around the stadium would have been quite cool. But no doubt it would become a stagnant cesspool. This is the first modern bowl stadium we've seen so far in this video, and it certainly is a good looking rooster. It's quite a sleek design. It's nice. There's just a lot less to talk about with these symmetrical bowl style stadiums. There's a different colour in every corner, not sure what that's about. Highbury Stadium, home of Fleetwood Town. It's not the one that Arsenal used to play at, that's for sure, but it's a lot better, simply because it still exists. There is an urban myth that says that the goals from Arsenal's Highbury are now at Fleetwood Town's Highbury. I couldn't find anything on that, but who knows. The ground has an almost jarring mix of old and new, with the somewhat typical stands on 3 sides, and the main stand that looks like it was designed by NASA. Well, actually I wouldn't go that far, let's say the European Space Agency. I can't imagine the old timers would have liked that, but it does certainly make the stadium stand out from the crowd. Priestfield Stadium, home of Gillingham. It's one of the few grounds that utilises temporary seating. That is the uncovered section behind the western end. And of course, this section is for the away fans, which, to be honest, it's understandable. You know, if a club isn't in the strongest financial position, they're not going to put themselves further into debt to make the away fans' experience less wet. Or perhaps they couldn't care less. Also, Gillingham is in the south of England, so it's probably not as cruel as it is in Accrington, which is up north. But other than that, the ground looks great. I like the hits of brick both inside and out. University of Bolton Stadium, home of Bolton Wanderers. It's actually located about halfway between Wigan and Bolton. To me, this one looks like a more built-up version of Huddersfield Town Stadium, the curving roof canopies in particular. The exterior looks great, and there's actually a hotel in there somewhere. That's a lot less conspicuous than some of the other stadium hotels. That can stick out like a sore thumb. It's a fairly symmetrical design made up of a double-tiered stand on each side, and corporate suites and whatnot in between each tier. Portman Road, home of Ipswich Town. This is probably the most seamless blend of old and new we've seen so far. There are quite a few stands of this particular style as you've seen, but very few are painted black. Perhaps they've been listening to the Rolling Stones, or perhaps it represents the little bit of black that's on the team's kit. Either way, it surprisingly looks fantastic, as do the modern elements of the exterior. On the inside, the Western Stand actually has 3 tiers of seating, which isn't too common in stadiums of this size. But yeah, I really like this one. Lerner Stadium, home of Lincoln City. Oddly enough, the non-commercial name sounds even more commercial. It's called Sincil Bank Stadium, due to the fact that it sits on the bank of Sincil. And while we're at it, some other features of the area are the Lincoln Cathedral. That's pretty much it. As with a couple of others we've seen so far, this one also has one of those mini stands, but next to it is an even smaller stand, and next to that is a hot dog stand. Wow! The Valley, home of Charlton Athletic. It's the first of just 2 Londonese clubs in this league, which is much less than the Premier League and the Championship have. Firstly, I love the name, The Valley, very poetic. The stadium has a fairly unique facade, particularly on the north side that has a combination of red cladding and beige blocks. The inside is also somewhat unique, with that one particular small stand at the southern end that allows some spectators a view of outside the stadium. That's not the prettiest of apartment buildings though. Plough Lane, home of AFC Wimbledon. Don't let the name fool you, there's nothing filthy going on at Plough Lane. This is actually a brand new stadium built on the site of an old greyhound racing stadium that was right near the site of another stadium that went by the name Plough Lane, which was the club's spiritual home. Kind of. AFC Wimbledon is actually a Phoenix club that was formed after Wimbledon FC moved to... well, it's the next one, so you'll see. The stadium is made up of only one permanent stand. The rest are temporary and will be replaced with larger ones when possible, to become this design, which looks pretty cool. Stadium MK, home of MK Dons. A team and fan base that get a lot of hate, that being due to the fact that the Dons moved from Wimbledon and abandoned their original fan base. That's where they get the name Don. Wimbledon. But you can understand their move because Wimbledon is notorious for its hatred of sport. No sport could ever survive in Wimbledon, it's simply not possible. So don't blame the owners, they had no choice. No, but in fairness, the stadium does look quite good. The black and silver exterior is quite unique, and the interior matches perfectly. A common review of the stadium is that the atmosphere is shite, but the legroom's alright. I made that up, but it's probably true. Globe Arena, home of Morecambe. Not to be confused with the Globe Arena in Stockholm, which is a much more accurate depiction of the globe. Clearly the people of Morecambe are flat earthers. Despite not looking like a globe, it is still a fairly unique stadium, in that it has an uncovered terrace that runs the length of the pitch rather than sitting behind one of the goals. which gives the ground a grassroots feel to it. The other side of the ground is quite the opposite, fairly modern and plenty of seats. Cheltenham Stadium, home of Oxford United. Also known for its university, but wait a second. Please don't tell me the western end is where the away fans are located, because that's just too far to make them sit in their car. But in reality, the stadium was going to be four-sided, but between the time the plans were drawn up and construction commencing, Oxford had been relegated. So the additional seating was deemed unnecessary. But it is still a nice stadium as it is, and the open end offers panoramic views of the car park.
Now, if you look over there, you'll see a jaguar. It's very rare to see these in the wild.
Home Park, the home park of Plymouth Argyle. It's the southernmost stadium in the Football League. Three sides of the stadium are connected and built in a modern style, whereas one stand, the Mayflower stand, has been left how it is, and rightly so. It was one of the many stands around the country designed by Archibald Leach, a legend of stadium architecture. Actually, it was refurbished just last year, but the overall structure remains the same. This ground is very easy on the eye. There's something about it. I think it's all the green in and around the stadium. Perhaps that's why they call it the Theatre of Greens. Fratton Park, home of Portsmouth. It is uniquely located on an island off the coast of Britain. Well, it's still connected via bridges, but all the other 91 grounds are on the mainland proper. The ground itself is quite traditional, made up of 4 stands, each with a different look to them. It shares some similarities with Goodison Park, but one thing that definitely sets it apart is the Tudor-inspired entrance. There's no Tudor influence on the inside though. Tudor stadiums had seats made from the stomach of a sheep, if I'm not mistaken, where these ones appear to be plastic. New York Stadium, home of Rotherham United. Located on the banks of the River Don and named for the area in which the stadium's located, New York, which is actually older than New York City, so maybe New York should be called New York, like in Futurama. But New York City could really use a stadium like this, because New York City FC plays in Yankee Stadium and New York Red Bulls play in New Jersey. And which city wouldn't want a great little stadium like this? A sleek modern facade, an interesting roof canopy, and an equally good interior. Hillsborough Stadium, home of Sheffield Wednesday. It's played a major part in the history of English football, in more ways than one. By sheer coincidence, this one's also located on the banks of the River Don, and it's even closer. It's basically swimming. Cool bridge. Just like its neighbours over at Bramall Lane, the ground has plenty of character and a couple of oddities, including this corner that's left without a roof, this clock that's older than time itself, and, well, I can't think of a third thing, but it definitely has a charm of its own, this ground. I'm quite fond of it. New Meadow, home of Shrewsbury Town. This ground was built to replace their old ground, Gay Meadow, hence the name. They dropped the Gay because they didn't want to get cancelled. No, but in reality, Gay Meadow was the historical name for the old site, so it wouldn't be appropriate. For the most part, it's your typical football stadium. There's something they do that's a little unique is that they sometimes add temporary seating to those undeveloped corners of the ground. Quite interesting.
Stadium of Light,
home of Sunderland. Well, I thought the name The Valley was poetic. Stadium of Light is on another level. It's to do with the city's coal mining heritage, and the fact that miners would carry around a lamp with them. There's even a giant one outside the ground. This place is rather impressive, and huge. You might be thinking, what the hell is the 8th largest club football stadium in England doing in the 3rd tier of English football? But that's the beauty of the pyramid. You can be riding high in the Premier League one year and then a few years later it's a different story. They should make a documentary about that. Or better yet, an entire series. Nah. DW Stadium, home of Wigan Athletic. The facade of the stadium is quite similar to a few that we've seen in this video, with the brick, the glass and the silver and white cladding. It looks alright. The interior is just made up of 4 fairly symmetrical single-tier stands, with the corners left open. And most importantly, I think that the food here will be impeccable. I've heard great things about the Wigan kebab. Don't really know what it is, but I love kebab, so... Actually, let's check. What is it? What? Why? Just eat the pie on its own. You've overdone the wheat to meat ratio. Didn't you learn about that in school? Disappointing. I mean, it still tastes fine, but just eat the pie. Adams Park, home of the Wycombe Wanderers. This stadium is deceptive. It does look like it's located in a beautiful setting in the English countryside, but that's not quite the case. It does back onto an industrial estate on the outskirts of High Wycombe, but it's still a relatively nice location, at least aesthetically speaking. You just have to block out the power pylons from your view and you're in a country meadow. Beautiful. It's a fairly solid stadium, and I quite like the colours. Hi, this is me from the future. I might have mispronounced a word. I believe I said High Wycombe. It's actually High Wycombe. Sorry. And those were the League One stadiums. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.